let's have a talk about the Russian economy. Not that I'm an expert on this, so I'm going to defer to people who are. This is a Twitter thread I found by Camille Galiv, who's a fellow at the Wilson Center, has various degrees in various things, and a master's in China studies from Peking University. So he's an academic. And he is just giving us an overview of the Russian economy. Basically, he's saying that Russia is well integrated into Western technological chains. What it produces is produced on Western industrial machines with Western technology and Western software and Western details. But the thing is, this is not what Russia exports. Russia exports resources, not complex technologies. And so it gains the resources with the complex technologies. And so the Russian government has for years now been pressuring them to be self-reliant. And this has been a big thing. Putin ordered this a few years back to launch what they call import substitution. As in, don't import that thing, build it in Russia. This is interesting because Russia is basically a mafia state, and he's got some theories on how mafia states operate. And I think this is really fascinating. So basically what he's saying is that mafias can't really run complex industries, but they can run extractive industries because it's just pumping oil out of the ground. Or he gives in this thread the example of Mexican cartels. The avocados are basically all cartel-dominated industries. Buying avocados means you're funding cartels. So think about that. Progressives, when you're sat there eating your avocado on toast. Apparently the colloquial term is blood avocados.
I love the taste of beheadings. I don't.
Yeah, well, that's basically it, right?
Okay.
And so in Russia, this is quite interesting because he says the dominance hierarchy in Russia means that the people closest to Putin, because essentially a mafia state, the people close to him have oil and gas because that's easy to pump out of the ground, but they don't have the really complex industries. And so, as he says here, the complex industries, such as competitive machinery production, are mostly run by low-in-dominance nerds, which means that they won't be allowed to grow. If the extractive businesses can rip them off, they will, and if they can't, they better transfer their production to the EU. And this domestic production is not neutral. You can't directly control complex industry. You allow it to enrich, and then you feed a rival interest group, which may become more powerful over time, and demand redistribution of power. So obviously, if you're a mafia state, you don't want that, and that's unacceptable. So this socio-political context makes any sort of serious import substitution or self-reliance absolutely unrealistic in the short run. With the current power balance and the current institutions, Russia simply can't do it. But because of its powerful cartel-like interest groups, this will end up sabotaging its own internal, complex machinery technologies. Who knows where this goes, right? But he basically views Putin's invasion of Ukraine as a fairly rational decision, because one of the ways that cartels maintain their dominance is by what appear to be irrational acts of violence. And I don't think it's necessarily an irrational act of violence, but the point is you've got to show people that you're serious, that you will use force, and they will have to do as they're told. But this is important because basically it's going to show that in the long term, well, at least in the short term, but in the sort of medium to long term, Russia's going to have real productive problems, right? Because they need things like ball bearings, that you need to run the wheels on a tractor. Well, you need to import them from the West. And if the West is completely sanctioning you and you're completely sanctioning them, well, this is all going to go downhill quite quickly, right? And it's going to undermine the cartel nature of the Russian government. But anyway, so let's move on to things that's just the framing. So we've got a brief overview of how Russia basically conducts itself. Like I said, I'm not an expert. I can't confirm it, but this seems to be plausible from what I've read. So Russia has moved to stop exports. Now that's interesting, isn't it? Because that's the Russian economy, basically, sending things outside of Russia, because Russia is a massive country that has loads of natural resources. But they've apparently, Putin is banning export products and raw materials outside the Russian Federation until at least 2023. And the government will define the list of states to be covered by these decisions within 2 weeks. Well, they seem to have drawn up a list of unfriendly countries. What?
I don't know why he's done that. Also, Putin, not Pew.
No.
Poo.
Pew.
Whatever.
It's like it's a Z and not a Z.
It's neither.
It's
anyway.
But anyway,
but why is he is he not even exporting to China?
Well,
what's the plan?
I mean, I don't imagine that it's going to be a full spectrum ban on any exports to any countries. But I think this is paving the way to say, well, look, a kind of disengagement from the Western global economic order is what I think is happening here. So the Kremlin has drawn up a list of approved countries who have been unfriendly to Russia. They obviously include Australia, the UK, the EU, Iceland, Canada, Liechtenstein, Monaco, New Zealand, Norway, Korea, San Marino. I mean, I assume that's South Korea. San Marino, Singapore, USA, Taiwan, Ukraine, unsurprisingly Ukraine, Montenegro, Switzerland, and Japan. And so
They're going on the friendly list in 10 years.
yeah, but this doesn't include lots of Russian trading partners in Asia or the Middle East, right? And so the interesting thing now is that wheat prices are surging because Russia is 18% of global wheat exports. We can go to the next one. So we see the graph. You can scroll down a bit. You can see the graph. You can see the spike in wheat prices. Right? Boom. Massive. Right? But the thing is, this is actually not our problem. If we can go to the next one.
Ukraine is also 10% of all wheat exports.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, well, it's something like 9% or something. But yeah, you can see this is Russia and Ukraine's global wheat exports. So Russia is 18% of international exports, and Russia and Ukraine together are nearly 26%. So that's massive. And the war has also caused Ukraine to stop exporting wheat. Literally on the day of the Russian invasion, Ukraine stopped wheat exports as well. This is bad for those people. But who are those people? You can see Israel, Spain, South Korea, Thailand, Indonesia, going up to Bangladesh, Turkey, and Egypt. Like, it's amazing that Egypt needs to import grain. You're on the Nile and you need grain. What the hell's wrong with you? But anyway, the point is, they're not going to the West, right? So it's other countries that are going to be affected by this.
The third world, as you would call it.
The third world.
Not the West, not the enemy bloc, but instead those in between.
Exactly. But the thing that we do import from Russia, or the US, when I say we, but we probably do as well, I didn't look into it, but the US imports fertilizer from Russia, and this is what is actually important. So it gets most of its fertilizer from Morocco, but the next biggest exporter of fertilizer to the US is Russia. This is millions of metric tons. And of course, you need this for domestic food production. This is what makes the food grow really well out of your ground. And there are separate tariffs on various other countries that produce fertilizer as well, such as China and various other places. And apparently that leaves 15% of the global phosphate market open to US farmers without tariffs, right? So if they're going to import food from China or wherever, fertilizer from China or wherever, then they're going to be paying a tariff. So what this means, if you're in America, your food bills are going to go up. Even though Russia doesn't export wheat to you, your food bills are still going to go up. And this is also an interesting point as well. If you go to the next one, I think it was the New York Times that made this point, or the Washington Post, sorry. They point out that, it's, quote, unlike oil production, which can be ramped up quickly, farms can't go back in time and plant extra crops to make up for Ukraine's lost production. The spike in global hunger could be a disaster and may have grave political consequences as well. Right? So Russia, and I think the point to make here is that when it's like, oh, we're going to sanction Russia. Okay, but Russia isn't powerless. It's not unconnected to the global economy. And there is going to be major, major consequences to this. Like millions of people could end up starving out of this because of our unwillingness to negotiate, basically. But anyway, so Biden, of course, did the sensible thing and decided to ban Russian oil imports into the US.
Because I said yesterday, it was kind of like you had to respect the hustle at the time yesterday when we were selling weapons to the Ukrainians and then buying Russian oil. Like, we're winning on
not
both
anymore.
fronts. Okay. What is gas in America now? Like $7 a gallon?
We'll get to it. Not quite that high, but it's getting there. But the point is, this actually doesn't have much of an impact because apparently America's imports of Russian oil are like 4%.
Oh.
So this barely touches their market anyway, right? And of course, I mean, this is Biden's statement. He says, I'm announcing the United States is targeting the main artery of Russia's economy. We're banning all imports of Russian oil and gas and energy. Well, most of Russia's oil, gas and energy goes to Europe. I don't know where the rest of that oil's going, but it's not to America. So what does that do? Like Russia doesn't actually supply that much energy to the United States. I mean, merely a year ago, the US was energy independent. So,
Do you miss me yet?
Yeah, exactly. We'll get to the orange man in a minute. But the point is, this is not a great blow against Russia that they think it is. And of course, Zelensky thinks this is a great idea. If you can get to the next one. We are thankful for the US in striking a blow at the heart of Putin's war machine, banning oil, gas, and coal from the US market. Well, I don't know how much of an impact that's really going to be. But the framing is what I find most disgusting about this, coming from the Biden regime, of course. That if you get, like, we've got a clip here, but I'm not going to play it. I'm just going to read it for time's sake. He says, quote, Putin's war is already hurting American families at the gas pump. I'm going to do everything I can to minimize Putin's price hike here. The increase in American fuel prices is not to do with Putin. It is not to do with the invasion of Ukraine, and it happened before the invasion of Ukraine.
Like, we have the graphs, Joe.
We know.
Like, we have the oil
record.
production going to there, energy independence, and you just turned it off and went down.
Yes. We will go through it, in fact. So, obviously, massive record fuel price increase in the United States at this point. It's the average national price has reached more than $4 a gallon. It was less than $2 a gallon under the evil orange man. It's $5 in California, according to subscribers of ours who have messaged me going, look at this picture of the price. And it's $5.20 or something. It's like, oh my God. Right. And obviously this is just going, oh, there we go. This is just going up. Trump, of course, did call this. He said in one of his campaign rallies a couple of years ago, if Biden got in, you'd be paying $7, $8, $9, and then they'll say, get rid of your car. Well, we're nearly there. Like, give it a couple of months, and it will probably be in that position at this point, because for some reason, Biden just won't do what he can to become energy independent. He'll tweet that that's what you need to do. You can see the next one. This crisis is a stark reminder. To protect our economy over the long term, we need to become energy independent.
You're already there.
Says Biden today.
You were there when you got in. You're the one who killed that.
You ruined it. You ruined that. Unbelievable. But of course, it should motivate us to accelerate our transition to a clean energy future. Ideology. Pure ideology. He's not wrong, though. He's not wrong when he points out his ideological things. And so let's just have a quick refresh of how brilliant things were under Trump. You may remember that at one point you were being paid $38 for your petrol. Literally, the price of oil went to minus $38 because Trump had brought in so much oil that the storage facilities needed to get rid of it.
There was also the pandemic, of course, that made it that funny, but Trump's work was not nothing.
No. And this was literally being paid to take fuel. And now...
Should have taken the deal.
just saying, it's so extreme, the contrast in a year.
I know where you get Trump in is like, I've got the art of the deal. We'll get paid to take oil.
Yeah.
That's a good deal.
And Biden's like, no, I'm going to ruin this. But literally a year ago, that's all this was, right? And the reason that this happened, of course, is because Biden literally won't let them drill for oil in America. You may remember that on day one, he killed the Keystone Pipeline, which was to tap Canada's massive oil reserves. Can't have that. Why? Because it's not environmentally friendly. Okay?
I don't give a shit.
Yeah, I don't care. I don't care at all. And the thing is as well, so America has got like large petrol fields of its own. What's the problem? Well, the problem is the Biden administration literally won't let them drill. As the people involved in the petrol industry in America are saying, this is something that Jen Psaki had said, that she says the United States is already producing oil at record numbers, and there are 9,000 approved drilling permits that are not being used. So the suggestion that we're not allowing companies to drill is inaccurate. I would suggest you ask the oil companies while they're not using those if there's a desire to drill more. As if the petrol industry doesn't want to make money.
You know, they always hate money. They hate the smell of money. They're throwing it away just to get rid of it.
Exactly. I mean, they were literally paying you to take it away at one point, so maybe that's their reasoning. But
oil execs can't stand being rich.
Yeah, exactly. It's ridiculous, right? And so the American Exploration and Production Council CEO Ann Bradbury told Fox Business, this is a red herring. It's a distraction from the fact that this administration has paused leasing on federal lands, something that we're concerned about and we need to think needs to continue right away, leasing. Right? The American Petroleum Industry Institute president, Mike Summers, said, once you lease land, there's a whole process you have to go through. First, you have to discover whether there's oil on the land, and then you have to get a permit to develop the land. Right now, we're actually developing more leases than we have in decades, so the White House doesn't have their facts straight on this. And Energy Workforce and Technology Council CEO Leslie Baer says, the moratorium on leasing certainly adds an additional block to American energy production. So that is the opposite of what we need to be doing right now. As in, you won't let us drill new fields. Psaki's lying. Biden's lying, and they're trying to blame Putin. It's not true, right? And the worst part about this is it's humiliating for the United States. Imagine spending the last, decade or so, sanctioning Iran, Venezuela, wherever else, and saying, yeah, no, you're bad people. We're not going to import from you. This is it. And then things not going your way, and then going, right, could we have a deal on oil, please? Why would they do it? Why wouldn't they be like, no, $300 a barrel, now what? You know, why wouldn't they humiliate you and rinse you?
Also, why would they not want more money? Like, the higher the price of oil goes, the richer they get.
Exactly. I think it was like $109 or something when I looked the other day. And it's like, why wouldn't they just absolutely gouge you for prices? And you must, but the thing is, they know, they're not stupid. They know the United States a year ago was energy independent, right?
And that was terrifying.
To them, yeah, exactly. It was terrifying to them. And so now, for Biden to come cap in hand going like, can I get some cheap oil, please? Like, are you mad? Like, what are you doing? Like, you're sat on billions of barrels of oil and you're coming to us for cheap oil. You're an idiot, you know? And anyway, but this is the problem with the American elites. The American elites seem to be absolutely lost in ideology. Because, I mean, like, the thing that's going around at the moment in all the economist circles is maybe we need price controls. Really? Really? Price controls were long ago dismissed as communist bunk. Says busy, exactly.
All they do is make shortages.
And all they do is create a black market as well. And the Austrian economists were absolutely right on price controls. Business Insider is wrong. This is an experiment that has been done dozens of times, going all the way back to the Roman Empire. We know that price controls don't work. Anyway, so what's Biden using your money on? Well, he's just managed to send $14 billion over to the Ukraine.
In what? Weapons?
Yeah. Aid, weapons, money.
For free? We're not even selling them to them now?
Not to my knowledge, it's an aid package.
So it's just free cash. Okay.
Yeah. $14 billion free cash to Ukraine. They're not corrupt or anything. Zelensky wasn't in the Panama Papers, was he? Oh, wait, he was. Right, okay, that's right. Because Ukraine is as corrupt as Russia. Sure, this is going to go exactly where it needs to go. Right, but the thing is, the Republicans had this was something that Mitch McConnell was championing, and he said that the settled upon figure was difficult. It was like pulling teeth, negotiating a higher dollar value with Democrats. So the Democrats are actually the ones who are like, maybe we shouldn't give them so much, and the Republicans are like, no, we need to give them as much as we can. The Democrats are like, yeah, but they are Nazis.
Well, some of them are.
Yeah, I know. But we'll get to this in a minute. Right. But literally, some progressives have raised questions about the scale of weapons shipments being sent to militia groups aligned with Ukraine's government, some of whom experts have warned have white nationalist ideologies.
Yeah, so there was meant to be a debate about making sure, like, having some procedures in place so it doesn't end up with those guys, but then everyone went, we'd rather just not know.
Yeah.
And that's been the solution.
I mean, I didn't include this, but Facebook used to have a more banning on praising Azov Battalion that they recently reversed. It's like, yeah, you're not allowed to praise these Nazis. But now we're at war with Russia, you are allowed to praise these Nazis.
They were white nationalists, but they're our white nationalists. Like
That's exactly what it is.
Ceausescu is our commie, the Reagan's phrase.
Yeah, no, it's exactly what it is. But anyway, and of course, it was International Women's Day yesterday, if any of you celebrate that communist holiday, and Biden does, so he's like, yeah, what we need is $2.6 billion for foreign assistance programs that promote gender equality worldwide.
Are we sending it all to Pakistan again?
This is your money, Americans, that they're absolutely pissing up the wall when you are about to encounter a massive economic downturn, and you are all of your food, your fuel, and like when fuel goes up, food goes up anyway, because of course you need fuel for the tractors and farm equipment and whatnot, and to get the food to the shops so you can buy it. Everything is about to go up in price, right? And so what's the opinion of the rich elites in America? Are they like, this is bad for regular people? Of course they're not. Of course they don't care, right? Let's go to the next one. Let's do George Takei.
I knew he was coming.
Yep. I think he's worth about $20 million. Americans, we can endure higher prices for food and gas if it means putting the screws on Putin. Consider it a patriotic donation for the fight for freedom over tyranny. Donations are voluntary.
We can do this.
From his mansion in California, you are making patriotic donations.
I mean, this is the kind of language, especially you're making a donation by having higher prices.
Yeah.
I remember reading from like North Korean propagandists writing about how we're going through the arduous journey. And don't worry, it's for the party. It's like,
I mean, that's literally his position. This is literally the party. But the best one was, of course, Stephen Colbert, who, I mean, when he is eventually dragged out into the street and eaten raw by poor people, when they actually finally eat the rich, I'm not going to shed a tear. Because this is a disgusting statement, and I really despise it. Quote, today, we'd play the clip, but we don't want to get copyright struck. Today, the average gas price in America hit an all-time record high of over $4 a gallon. They used to pay you to take it away. Okay, that stings, but a clean conscience is worth $1 or $2. It is important. I'm willing to pay $4 a gallon. Hey, I'll pay $15 a gallon because I drive a Tesla. I hate it. They deserve everything they're going to get. When the guillotines come out, they deserve it.
The left-wing vision of the future.
Yep.
I drive a Tesla. It doesn't matter to me. Put it up to $30. What do I...
Exactly.
That really is gross.
Also, he's worth $75 million. So what does he care? He can afford it.
He'll buy another Tesla. He'll have 3 Teslas.
Exactly. He'll buy an entire fleet of bloody Teslas. And so this let them buy Teslas is basically the clarion call of the Mary Antoinettes of the left-wing establishment. Again, Pete Buttigieg came out and was like, if gas prices are too high, just buy an electric car. They cost at minimum like $50,000. You can't pay for your week's fuel costs. And they're like, yeah, we'll just buy a Tesla, bro. It's like, sorry, we're not all multi-millionaire Californians. Don't know what to tell you.
That actually is really, really gross.
It's disgusting.
Like, isn't the let them eat cake thing meant to be fake?
It is, yeah. She definitely didn't say it, but it definitely encompassed the spirit of the time.
But Pete did say this.
Yeah, let them buy Teslas. It's unbelievable, right? But okay, so let's ask the guy who owns Tesla. I mean, he must be like, brilliant. No, hate to say it, but we need to increase oil and gas output immediately. Extraordinary times demand extraordinary measures, says Elon Musk, the guy who makes and owns the Teslas.
Tesla man says no.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And he just replies, obviously this would negatively affect Tesla, but sustainable energy solutions simply cannot react instantaneously to make up for Russian oil and gas exports. It's not even the Russian oil and gas exports that are the problem. But he, as he said, we need to increase the output.
He's thinking of a global perspective as well. Of course, he's not just thinking the United States.
Good point.
But also just absolutely correct.
Yes, 100% correct. The Mary Antoinettes and the Democrat regime are ludicrous and totally disconnected from reality. Anyway, I realize I'm going on, but we're going to go on because there's a lot to cover, right? And so he also wants us to return to nuclear energy because you may remember that Germany shut down their last remaining nuclear plants the other day.
So they could import gas from Russia?
Yeah, I don't know why. The hell's wrong with them?
Trump told them not to do it, and they did it anyway.
They were like, oh, this is for the planet? It's like, no, it's the most green energy. What now? Anyway, they're of course totally dependent on Russian gas to heat their homes. And this was brought up in the EU Parliament the other day, being like, well, hang on a second. We've bought 10 billion euros worth of gas and oil from Russia in the last 12 days. Are we funding this war effort? Yeah, you might be. You might be funding the war effort. Good point.
You know, people have been pointing out all the burnt Russian vehicles and how that's going to cost them. And now I'm thinking, nah, no, it's not.
They don't care. It's probably good for their economy. But anyway, so Europe is, of course, going like, okay. And what I love about Europe, right, is it's such a big, dense bureaucracy that if something gets through, it must be really important, right? And so even Ursula von der Leyen was like, maybe we actually shouldn't be completely dependent on Russia for our energy. Maybe that's bad. So, oh, brilliant. Big brain thinking here. You know, maybe Merkel closing down all the nuclear power plants wasn't in our best interests.
Maybe other kinds of independence are good, Ursula.
Yeah. And so what they've done is outlined a plan to achieve energy independence from Moscow well before 2030. 2030? You need it tomorrow. In fact, you needed it yesterday or about 5 years ago. But now you've got it in 2030. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. We must become independent from Russian oil, coal and gas, says Ursula von der Leyen. We simply cannot rely on a supplier who explicitly threatens us. Then why did you? Because it was cheaper, isn't it? That's why you did it. But anyway, we are, of course, in Britain also going to pay for this. Liz Truss, I think it was, who was in Parliament the other day, was like, there will be an economic cost for British people from the sanctions in the terms of their energy bills. That cost is nothing compared to the cost of the people of Ukraine for this horrific barbarism.
I've seen people on Facebook just posting, my bills have gone up by like 100%. How the hell am I going to pay for this?
Yes, it's disgusting.
And then people discussing, well, should I just buy a wood-burning stove to try and heat the house?
And go out and chop some trees. I mean, they're just free in the forest.
There's also people talking about how to mess with their meters. Don't do that.
yeah. But this is the point. Like, we are going to pay the cost of all of this. And so the question is, why is this happening? And there are theories that this could be a long-running judo move by Putin. and that he has been planning this for quite some time. This is a very interesting thread. A link will be in the notes of the show on the website, so go and check that out because it's really worth it. But basically, this is a summary of someone who's been looking into this, and he thinks that this will lock the US into a spiral of inflation, increased debt, insecurity in the dollar, continued money printing, and an inability to trade our way out of it. Entirely possible. Essentially, what this is an attempt to do is abolish the dollar as the world reserve currency by making it worthless. And that's not good for the West. And we seem to be playing right into what looks like a long-term plan by Putin. So if we go to the next one, it turns out that Russia's been stockpiling gold for quite some time. Oh, sorry, I'll get to that in a second. Russia has returned to the gold standard, allegedly. Right, so they're putting forward a bill in their parliament and the state Duma. So purchasing gold bars or other precious metals from the bank, the 20% tax on top of it will be abolished, and this is interesting. I mean, I'm no financial expert, but surely it was the abolition of the gold standard that made the dollar what it was. And so if people are like, yeah, we're not going to do that, then that's going to take away what the dollar is. And this is something that's important, I think, because it seems that Russia and the People's Bank of China have both been stockpiling gold for quite some time. Here's a 2019 article talking about it. Watch out. China and Russia are stockpiling gold. They've been doing this since 2014 at the very least.
I remember Tick making this point as well, which is if gold is so worthless and the gold standard means nothing, why does even the British government have huge reserves of gold just sitting around just in case?
Well, our reserves are less than they used to be, actually.
I know, but why do we even keep any? If gold standard's worthless and gold isn't really worthwhile keeping, why do we do it? It's because it's reality.
Yeah, but we actually have a very small amount of gold compared to many other countries.
That's just why do we even collect it if it's worthless?
The reason is because things have value if we think they have value. And the thing about gold is it can't inflate. Because there's literally been something like 174,000 tons of gold that's been mined in all of human history. Like we actually know the exact amount of gold that has ever been mined. You can't just money printer go burr, right? Which means that if gold is the thing that underpins transactional cost, then the amount of labor that a piece of gold is worth is actually fairly constant, right? It's something you can't just inflate out into nothing. But anyway, so another thing that Russia had been doing, again reported in 2019, is that it's trying to reduce dollar transactions. Russia has been concluding currency swap deals with countries that have poor relations with the US, including Iran, Turkey, and China. And another one from the Financial Times, we quickly go to the next one. This was, can we scroll down? I can't remember what year this was in. 2020 was. Russia and China are partnering to reduce their dependence on the dollar, a development some experts may lead to a financial alliance between them. Looks like this was a long-term plan for the Russians and the Chinese to essentially judo move the American stupidity and arrogance against them. You're going to cut everything off from the world economy? Okay, let's do it. Russia and China are stockpiling gold. Notice that when the MasterCard and Visa cut off Russia, as we covered the other day, the Chinese stepped right in with their, what was it called? The payment scheme?
Oh, I don't remember. The Chinese one. Apparently the Russians are going to replace it with MIR, which is their own system. The word, that means peace in Russian, which is very funny because it's obviously ironic.
Shockingly, they have a word for peace. I suppose it just means not war, right? But the point is, this is not good for America and the West, right? Because it looks like there's a kind of growing awareness, a kind of consciousness among the various enemies of America that actually America is really weak right now. It's a really vulnerable position, and maybe now is the time to just go all in. Because like you were saying, the Russians are going to be like, well, we've suffered worse.
Well, if not now, when?
Exactly. If not now, when?
I was talking to my mate about this. Just like with Biden in, if not now, when?
Yeah.
Trump might get back in. Don't want to be doing all that.
Exactly. You're not going to do it with Trump in because he was going to do something about it. Biden is going to be like, well, we're going to sanction you. We know. We've sanctioned you already. Now get out. You know, which they have done. And so just to end this is, okay, well, like, it can't be all bad. Surely, like, you know, the Saudis are still on side. Except they're not returning Biden's calls. It's weird, isn't it? But apparently, they did accept a call from Putin, according to the Wall Street Journal, which is weird. We seem to be putting the entire world in a coalition against us. Remember, democracies are only 20% of the world's governments. Like, the West is actually a really small number of people in the world. And it's a shrinking number of people in the world.
It's even a small number of countries.
Yes. But, like, most of the world's population are now in league with Russia and China. It's not good.
If you appreciate that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content we have on the site, such as Bo's interview here with Simon Webb, or you may know on YouTube as History Debunked, or Debunked. If you want to find out what else we're putting out, you can always follow us on Getter at @lotuseaters_com. Thank you and goodbye.